For years, the specter of a Russian invasion loomed over the Baltic states, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. This not-so-distant threat was the driving force behind their decision to join NATO in 2004. With Russia's aggressive move into Ukraine, those fears morphed into an urgent reality. The three nations rallied together, joining forces with other NATO allies to fortify their defenses. Yet Lithuania aimed to take a bolder step, announcing the establishment of a formidable 30-mile-long defensive belt along its borders with Russia and Belarus. Why the heightened alert? Aside from Finland, these states are NATO's only buffer against the vast Russian landmass. Estonia's border unfolds over approximately 200 miles, although lakes account for nearly half. Latvia boasts around 183 miles of border with Russia and an additional 106 miles bordering Belarus. Lithuania stretches further, encompassing a substantial 422-mile border with Belarus and about 170 miles adjoining the Russian enclave of Kaliningrad. The Lithuanian capital, Vilnius, is alarmingly close, just 21 miles from the Belarus border, making it a prime target should hostilities arise. However, Lithuania's defense strategy unveiled by Minister Dovile Sakaliene in August 2025 seeks to shield the capital behind an extensive layer of fortifications. Critics quickly likened this ambitious project to the notorious French Maginot Line. But such an analogy overlooks vital differences. The Maginot Line was built in the 1920s and 1930s as a concrete bastion against Nazi invasion, spanning 280 miles. Despite its robust design, it ultimately failed when Germans outflanked it through Belgium, leading to a swift and staggering defeat for France. Lithuania intends to learn from history. Its defense plan will stretch across the entire border, linking the northern Latvian border with the southern Polish frontier. The mistake of leaving gaps, like the Maginot Line, won't be repeated. With NATO partners already securing the strategic Suwałki Gap, the defense line will form an unyielding barrier against potential Russian advances. In recent years, the efficacy of layered defenses became strikingly clear through Ukraine's tenacious resistance against Russia. Learning from Ukraine's success in repelling invasions, Lithuania's defensive belt promises a similarly robust design, fortified against any assault. The stakes couldn't be higher as the geopolitical landscape shifts, igniting fears that any miscalculation could spark a conflict with dire consequences. As the anticipation builds, one question hangs in the air: will this courageous stand deter aggression, or will it only escalate the tensions that threaten Europe today? The answer to this pivotal moment in history remains to be seen, but the implications shape not only the Baltic states but also the entire NATO alliance. How will the world respond if the warning signs go unheeded? Could a modern defensive line truly stand where the infamous Maginot Line fell? History may judge harshly, but Lithuania is determined not to repeat past mistakes. The notorious Maginot Line was once hailed as an impenetrable barrier, yet it crumbled when enemy forces simply slipped past unexpected routes. Does Lithuania's plan offer a fresh and ironclad answer, or is it doomed to fail again? To understand what's at stake, recall how the Maginot Line was a colossal web of concrete fortresses, trenches, and steel, constructed by France between 1929 and 1938. Spanning about 280 miles from Switzerland to Luxembourg, it was designed to withstand bombs and tank fire. Inside its walls were cooled living quarters, supply depots, and even narrow-gauge railways for rapid resupply. French commanders believed this defense-in-depth system would stall any German invasion, buying crucial time to mount a counterattack. But then came 1940, and the nightmare unfolded. The German army avoided this mighty barrier altogether. They marched through Belgium's dense Ardennes forest, a landscape the French dismissed as impossible to cross with large forces. This bold move, known as Cache Yellow, trapped hundreds of thousands of French and Allied troops. France fell, not because the line was weak, but because it stopped short of the Belgian border. The unprotected gap became a fatal blind spot. Lithuania has studied this grim lesson carefully. Their defense strategy, revealed by Defense Minister Dovile Sakaliene in August 2025, aims to seal every inch of their borders. Stretching from the northeast where Lithuania meets Latvia, down to the Belarus-Poland border to the south, and bordering the Russian enclave of Kaliningrad. This plan envisions a sweeping 30-mile deep defensive belt. The only exception is the 65-mile border with Poland, known as the Suwalki Gap, which NATO already heavily guards. Unlike France in the 1930s, Lithuania refuses to leave any weak points exposed, anticipating every possible route of attack. The echoes of history are loud. Can this multi-layered defensive approach stand strong where the Maginot Line once collapsed? As tensions simmer and skies echo with distant engines, Lithuania's future may depend on the steel and strategy laid out in this defense belt. Will it deter aggression, or become yet another costly miscalculation in the shadows of Europe's turbulent past? The next moves could reshape an entire continent's fate. For years, experts have sounded alarm bells about a looming threat in Eastern Europe, the potential for Russia to make a move against the Baltic states, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. Fearing invasion, these nations joined NATO in March 2004, seeking protection from what many viewed as an aggressive neighbor. When Russia invaded Ukraine, these fears were amplified. The Baltics recognized the necessity of robust defenses, and Lithuania took decisive action. Imagine, if you will, the tension in the air as Lithuania unveiled its bold strategy, a monumental 30-mile defensive belt stretching along its borders. A response not only to Russia but also to Belarus, this layered defense was meticulously planned. But how does it measure up against historical failures like the notorious Maginot Line? Critics raised eyebrows, asking, could a mere line of fortifications truly deter a modern invasion? As one delves deeper, the specifics of Lithuania's strategy come into focus. Its borders with Latvia, Belarus, and even the Russian enclave of Kaliningrad are now enveloped in a protective barrier. Only the Suwalki Gap, a strategic piece of land linking Lithuania with Poland, lacks direct fortifications, but NATO's presence in the region makes for a robust defense. Unlike the Maginot Line, which was easily circumvented in World War II, Lithuania's plan aims for no gaps. The reality of recent conflicts shapes this strategy. Inspired by Ukraine's successful defensive lines against Russian advances, Lithuania is learning from their neighbors. The sustained endurance shown by Ukraine has become a template, a multi-layered strategy yielding success on the battlefield. But let's not overlook the fear factor. Russia's infamous Surovikin Line, named after a general known as General Armageddon, has shaped this new approach. He oversaw defensive strategies that turned the tide in the Ukrainian theater, proving that well-planned fortifications can resist overwhelming forces, at least temporarily. What awaits Lithuania's defenses as tensions escalate further? The clock ticks, and every day brings the threat closer. Will history repeat itself, or has Lithuania carved a new path forward? The stakes couldn't be higher, and the world watches with bated breath. In a tense atmosphere filled with uncertainty and fear, the world held its breath. For decades, alarm bells have been ringing in the West. Experts and leaders alike warned of Russia's ambitions to claim the Baltic states of Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. This looming threat served as the primary catalyst for these nations joining NATO back in March 2004. Fast forward to the present day, and the invasion of Ukraine has only heightened these fears, particularly for the Baltic nations, which have thrown their full support behind Ukraine. What does this mean for their future? Lithuania, sensing the impending danger, has set forth an ambitious plan, unveiling a 30-mile defensive barrier aimed at safeguarding its territory against potential aggression from Russia and its ally, Belarus. This monumental strategy is not just a response, it's a declaration of resolve. The stakes are high. Estonia alone has a border with Russia that stretches nearly 200 miles, a vulnerable expanse that ignites dread. Latvia's border totals around 183 miles, while Lithuania's stretches an imposing 422 miles, with the capital Vilnius sitting perilously close to hostile territory, only 21 miles from Belarusian boundaries. Enter Lithuania's defense minister, Dovilas Sakalyin, who rolled out plans in 2025 that aim to fortify the nation with a layered defense structure. The critics label it a modern-day version of the Maginot Line, a series of entrenched fortifications built by France to deter German advances. However, history teaches us that static defenses can falter, often bypassed by shrewder strategies as seen in past conflicts. But will this defensive strategy succeed where others failed? Unlike the Maginot Line, which extended from Switzerland to Luxembourg but ultimately did not protect France from invasion, Lithuania's approach seeks to cover every inch of its frontier, from the northern Latvian border to southern alignments with Poland. This proactive measure combats the vulnerability highlighted by past military blunders and aims to create a formidable barrier. Based upon the lessons learned from the defense patterns observed in Ukraine, Lithuania's strategy incorporates elements proven effective in combat. The trench-like systems, layered obstacles, and compartments are designed to halt any potential onslaught. As sections of the Surovikin line in Ukraine have exemplified, modern battlegrounds demand adaptable and robust defensive formations. The unexpected turn of events is in the stark realization that while one nation steels itself for battle, the echoes of past failures resonate, urging others to rethink their tactical postures. The challenge is immense as nations brace for uncertainty, caught in a turbulent landscape dominated by memories of conflict and hopes for resolution. Has Lithuania truly fortified its defenses, or have they unwittingly stepped onto a path laden with similar pitfalls of historical failures? The fate of the Baltic states could hinge on the answer. As the drumbeats of tension grow louder, the question remains, can resilient structures and fortified borders truly deter an invading force, or will they become yet another chapter in the book of military miscalculations? The clock is ticking. The stage is set. Only time will tell if these nations can secure their future against an unpredictable adversary. Previously, we saw how Ukraine's defensive lines, inspired by the Surovikin line, had pushed back relentless advances, forcing enemy forces into costly stalemates and brutal frontlines. Now, Ukraine's frontline defenses have evolved further, stretching over 621 miles with layers of trenches, concrete obstacles, and fortified strongholds designed to stop hostile advances cold. Imagine the cold morning air in early 2024, scents of wet earth and swirling dust mix as laborers dig freshly carved trenches. Rows upon rows of dragon's teeth, those jagged concrete tank traps, sprout defiantly across key battlescapes near Lyman and Avdiivka in Donetsk, and along the outskirts of Kupiansk and Kharkiv. This imposing network isn't limited to the front line, it extends all along Ukraine's border with Russia and Belarus, right out to the edges of Poland. These defenses are built with a brutal logic, a triple-layered system, minefields, anti-vehicle ditches, and trenches bristling with vigilant defenders, all connected by underground command centers shielded from aerial attack. Further behind the lines, a labyrinth of fallback trenches and hardened command posts sprawls across Ukrainian-held territory. Take Pokrovsk, a city under siege for months in 2025. Imagine its streets ringed by two concentric layers of trenches, almost like a fortress, almost impregnable. Every mile in front of cities like Pokrovsk and Lyman is packed with fortifications standing less than a mile apart, like an iron web waiting to swallow any enemy who dares to come close. Clement Mollin, co-founder of the French Atom Mundi think tank, once remarked, "Each fort defends itself from every direction. You must conquer them all to make progress." And yet, even these vast efforts couldn't prevent tragic losses when Russian forces finally seized Avdiivka, Bakhmut, and Toretsk, but the price was staggering. In many sectors, especially in Sumy, Russian attempts to carve out buffer zones against Ukrainian drone raids or a possible repeat of the Kursk incursion faltered immediately, crashing against the first line of Ukrainian defenses. All these brutal, hard-earned lessons from Ukraine's frontline warfare have clearly shaped Lithuania's ambitious plan for a huge defensive belt stretching along its entire border. Not alone in this endeavor, Estonia, Latvia, and Poland are now erecting similar defenses, anticipating dangers they refuse to underestimate. But here's a chilling thought: can a defensive belt built on the ashes of others' failures finally deter the looming threat? How deep must these trenches be to protect the heart of Lithuania, and the entire Baltic region, from a shadow that grows ever darker? The stakes could not be higher, and the story of this belt's rise is far from over. For years, warnings echoed across Western capitals. Russia might soon try to seize Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. These Baltic nations joined NATO back in 2004 to stop just that. The invasion of Ukraine intensified these fears dramatically. Since then, all three have bolstered their defenses alongside NATO allies. But Lithuania wasn't satisfied with just reinforcing NATO's shield. It unveiled plans for a massive, 30-mile-deep defensive barrier along its borders with Russia and Belarus. What does this mean for regional security? How will it change the game? So far, the Baltic states have slipped into high alert because they, except for Finland, are NATO's only members directly bordering Russia. Estonia's 200-mile border crosses many lakes, while Latvia stretches about 183 miles beside Russia and 106 miles next to Belarus. Lithuania's border is even longer, 422 miles with Belarus and roughly 170 miles abutting the Russian exclave of Kaliningrad. It's crucial to note that Vilnius, Lithuania's capital, sits only 21 miles from Belarus, making it vulnerable if invasion occurs. The new defense line is designed precisely to protect the capital, shielding it behind multiple fortifications within that 30-mile belt. Some critics quickly compared this plan to the infamous Maginot Line from the 1930s, France's mighty but doomed defensive wall. Yet, that analogy misses key details. The Maginot Line was a fortress of concrete and steel designed to withstand tanks and bombers. It had underground shelters, supply railways, and soldier quarters, spanning 280 miles, stretching from Switzerland to Luxembourg. French commanders believed it would delay Nazi Germany long enough to mount a counterattack. But the Germans bypassed it, striking through Belgium's Ardennes, crushing French forces. The mistake wasn't the line's strength but its failure to cover all borders and anticipate the enemy's strategy. Lithuania learned from these historical blunders. Its new defense belt will stretch completely from the Latvian border in the northeast to the Polish border in the south, masking all vulnerable points, including Kaliningrad's frontier. The only gap is the 65-mile Polish Suwałki Gap, but that corridor is heavily defended by NATO. Unlike the Maginot Line's blind spots, Lithuania's plan actively prevents the enemy from slipping through unnoticed. Inspired by Ukraine's recent defense successes, Lithuania applies a multi-layered approach proven to stall Russian advances. The harsh lessons from battles on Ukrainian soil have shaped these plans. Take the Surovikin Line, named after the infamous Russian general, General Armageddon. This line in southeastern Ukraine tried to block massive Ukrainian counteroffensives in 2023. It spans around 81 miles, with 3 levels of defense, mines, anti-vehicle ditches, and concrete spikes known as Dragon's Teeth. Russian troops held trenches on high ground, watching every move through their defenses. Despite fierce Ukrainian attempts, this ugly but effective line forced attackers to crawl forward inch by inch, paying a heavy price for every step. Ukraine's own active defense strategy goes further, building dense webs of trenches, hidden command posts, and minefields along hundreds of miles of front line. Cities like Pokrovsk are circled by multi-layered defenses less than a mile apart. Each fortress can hold itself from every direction. It's not just a defense, it's a fortress maze designed to grind down any attacker. That's the real school of war Lithuania took note of, fortifications that aren't just walls but living networks ready to absorb and retaliate. Now, the 3 Baltic states took a bold leap forward. In January 2024, they signed a pact to build the Baltic Defense Line, a sprawling barrier slicing through 1,000 miles of joint borders with Russia and Belarus. Across this line rise hundreds of bunkers and obstacles aimed at herding any attacker into kill zones controlled by defenders. Estonia pledged $65 million to build 600 bunkers along its border. These small fortresses nest in T-shaped dugouts, shielded by earthen walls. In peacetime, they quietly stand guard, but if invaded, local forces are prepared to unleash razor wire, mines, trenches, and dragon's teeth. Latvia got busy too, starting to lay down their section in May 2024, stacking concrete pyramids, metal fences, and dragon's teeth, all cleverly designed to slow and disrupt a mechanized attack. These materials stay stored near the border, ready for rapid deployment when war knocks. By summer, the first phase was already underway in Latvia's Latgale region, with these sturdy obstacles being transported and strategically positioned. To the south, Poland joined the fortification effort with its Shield East initiative, covering a 430-mile frontier with Belarus and Kaliningrad. Valued at $2.5 billion and due for completion by 2028, this line will feature anti-drone systems and a fortress network supporting both ground troops and civilian protection. Its mission is clear: halt any adversary's movement while granting freedom of action to Polish defenders. Imagine this grim chessboard, an unyielding line of defenses stretching hundreds of miles. What sounds pierce this tense silence? The distant thud of earth-moving machines, the metallic clang of steel barriers locked in place, the sharp smell of freshly disturbed soil mixed with cold morning mist. Every bunker dug, every wire stretched, brands a message: we're ready, and we will not yield. But can walls and trenches truly stop a determined attacker, especially one as unpredictable as Russia? Or will history replay itself and expose new vulnerabilities? Lithuania's belt seems a formidable gambit, but in the shadow of past failures and ongoing conflicts, only time will tell. Could this be the fortress that actually holds? Or is it just another line waiting to be broken? The coming years will unfold a story of defiance, strategy, and survival at the edge of the European continent. Imagine facing an enemy with far greater numbers and advanced weapons poised right on your doorstep. How do you survive? Lithuania and its neighbors are caught in just such a precarious position. They've committed to spending vast sums, over 5% of their entire economy, to strengthen their defenses. But even with cutting-edge tanks, anti-tank missiles, and hardened fortifications, the biggest question remains: do they have enough soldiers to hold the line when the storm hits? In the previous chapter, we saw Lithuania stockpile hundreds of powerful artillery shells, order dozens of new German battle tanks, and add precision Israeli-made missile systems to its arsenal. These are not mere upgrades, they are lifelines against a potential invasion. Yet, hardware alone can't win battles. Lithuania fields roughly 23,000 professional soldiers, backed by 104,000 reservists. Across its borders, its Baltic siblings Estonia and Latvia are even smaller. Estonia, with 7,500 active troops and 41,000 reserves, Latvia with 8,500 active and 16,000 in reserve. Against them stand Belarus and Russia, with tens of thousands of troops positioned mere kilometers away. Belarus holds around 65,000 troops, plus 350,000 reserves. Russian forces in the region vary, from a few thousand up to 10,000 near the border, with the enclave of Kaliningrad home to strategic forces including hundreds of highly destructive tactical nuclear weapons. The recent deployment of hypersonic missiles to Belarus only deepens the threat. Amid such an imbalance, it's clear why Lithuania's audacious plan for a 30-mile deep defensive belt is so critical. It's a shield not just of walls and weapons, but of time, a precious buffer designed to stall and disrupt any advance long enough for NATO reinforcements to arrive. But here's the catch. Military exercises warn that the difference between holding the Baltic states or losing them could hinge on how fast NATO moves. Can reinforcements cut through Kaliningrad's sophisticated air and sea denial systems? Can armies be safely funneled through narrow corridors like the Suwalki Gap before the hammer falls? Picture the tension: soldiers waiting in trenches, the hum of armored vehicles reverberating through smoky air, the sharp scent of burning fuel. Every hour lost could bring the enemy closer to their capital cities. Every unreinforced mile could become a death trap. The Baltic defense line isn't just concrete and wire. It's a desperate bet on speed, coordination, and unyielding resolve against overwhelming odds. What happens if this delicate balance breaks? Will the Baltic states withstand the coming storm, or will history repeat itself in the darkest of ways? Previously, we saw that NATO's success in defending the Baltic states depends heavily on how fast reinforcements can arrive. Shutting down Russia's control over the skies, sea routes, and land corridors around Kaliningrad and Belarus is crucial. But securing safe passage through the narrow Suwalki Gap remains a race against time. Every day delayed makes a Russian strike more deadly. Now, envision Lithuania's bold response, a massive, smart defensive belt designed to stop invaders in their tracks and change the entire game. Imagine this defense line as a cunning trap, not just a wall. It's engineered to slow Russia's advance while herding enemy troops into deadly traps where NATO forces can crush them. This strategy is a clever twist on an old Soviet tactic called the elastic defense, first seen in 1943's Battle of Kursk. The enemy is allowed to break through in carefully selected areas, but those breaks lead nowhere good. Once inside, the flanks snap shut around them. The invaders find themselves sealed inside a cruel cage, crushed by attacks from all sides. Picture the terrain: flat fields, thick forests, witchy wetlands, tangled rivers, and marshes stretching along the borders of Belarus, Russia, and Lithuania. This isn't just tough ground, it's perfect for an elastic defense. Nature's obstacles become allies, shaping a sprawling multi-layered ring of fortifications that's as much about psychology as bricks and mortar. The toughest zones to hold, and the funnels where the enemy must go, seem almost designed by the land itself. But no fortress stands without soldiers. And to keep this complex web of defenses running smoothly, Lithuania will need serious manpower and support. Here's the twist: Germany recently pledged to boost Lithuania's defenses by permanently stationing a full brigade of 5,000 elite troops, the 45th Armored Brigade. Already, U.S. forces and 500 German soldiers are present, but this new addition will be a game-changer by 2027. Can you hear the distant rumble? The sound of armored vehicles rolling across varied terrain, soldiers digging trenches, laying traps, and readying for what some may call an inevitable storm? Will this intricate network hold, or will history repeat itself in one brutal sweep? What happens when old tactics meet modern technology on this battlefield shaped by nature's fierce obstacles? The answer could redefine the future of Europe's eastern flank, or open the door to chaos. The trap is set. The clock is ticking. Will Lithuania's defensive belt be the undead echo of history's failures, or the strongest shield ever forged against a towering threat? In our last segment, we saw how Lithuania, bolstered by the promise of a full German armored brigade by 2027, is preparing for a serious confrontation. U.S. troops are already stationed there, and Germany's advance unit of 500 soldiers lays the groundwork for the 5,000-strong 45th Armored Brigade. But these reinforcements are just part of a larger, intense effort. Now, Lithuania is not just relying on allies, they are intensifying their own forces. Between August 11th and 22nd, the country held a bold military drill known as Fierce Wolf 2025, right along the tense Belarusian border. Imagine the buzz of engines, the sharp commands echoing across open fields, and the smell of freshly fired rounds filling the air. Over 350 soldiers and 50 combat vehicles participated, practicing live fire and defensive tactics, even within populated areas. The Vilka's infantry fighting vehicles rolled into position, while battalion-level equipment moved with precision, preparing every detail for defense. Behind all this action, the massive construction of Lithuania's defensive belt is already underway. Officials from the Ministry of Defense have laid out a long game, a decade-long project split into two phases. The first phase, running up to 2028, focuses on building solid measures to halt any Russian advance through layered defenses. Then, starting in 2029, a continual process of maintenance, modernization, and further development kicks in, ensuring these defenses never grow obsolete. This timeline is not arbitrary. Many NATO leaders quietly estimate that any serious Russian attempt might come around 2029 or 2030. If their predictions hold true, Lithuania will be ready, not with just one line of defense, but multiple, overlapping barriers designed to stop aggressors cold. Could Russia's invasion be stopped and broken, just like Ukraine's failed push against the infamous Surovikin line? This looming question hangs heavy in the air, a tense, suspenseful anticipation. With all the stakes and preparations, what comes next might redefine the European security landscape forever. Stay tuned, because the story is far from over, and the next chapter could shock us all. A looming shadow hangs over the Baltic states as they brace for a potential threat. For years, analysts and leaders have warned of Russia's ambition to invade and claim territories such as Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. This alarm served as a catalyst for these nations to join NATO back in 2004, seeking a united front against aggression. With Russia's recent actions in Ukraine, these fears have grown more urgent. In response, the Baltic states have taken significant steps to fortify their borders. However, Lithuania has gone further, proposing an ambitious 30-mile defense line along its border with Russia and Belarus. Why is Lithuania taking these measures, and how could they change the course of history? With borders that stretch vulnerably along the Russian expanse, Lithuania's Defense Minister Dovilas Sakalyin unveiled a plan in August 2025 that promises to transform the defensive landscape. Beyond sheer fortifications, this plan aims to disrupt any potential invasion strategies employed by Russia. Consider the high-stakes game of security that plays out along these borders. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania share critical strategic lines with Russia, each mile marked with tension. Lithuania's capital, Vilnius, sits perilously close to the Belarus border, making it an attractive target. But the fortress-like defense envisioned by Sakalyin aims to push back against invaders, both physically and psychologically. This multi-layered defense plan will include deep trenches, deadly minefields, and strong points designed to slow aggressors down significantly. The first line of defense will reveal intricate networks of ditches and obstacles, while deeper layers will house artillery and infantry strongholds ready to react. Notably, Lithuania has also made controversial but necessary decisions, such as withdrawing from the Ottawa Convention, thus allowing for the use of mines that could increase the deadly stakes for invading forces. But is Lithuania's approach too reminiscent of the infamous Maginot Line, built by France and ultimately bypassed by the Germans during World War II? Critics draw parallels, yet the wisdom gleaned from past mistakes is evident in Lithuania's tactics. Avoiding historical pitfalls will be crucial as they lay down their defensive groundwork, carefully choosing not to leave such tactical gaps. Despite the daunting cost of approximately $2.5 billion for these fortifications, the stakes have never been higher. By 2028, these defenses aim to not only safeguard Lithuania but also make movement for aggressor troops a complex web of obstacles, forcing them into choke points where resistance can be maximized. The scale is staggering. 27 engineering equipment parks will stockpile resources essential for counter-mobility, including razor wire and concrete roadblocks, designed to slow any advancing forces. As the clock ticks, will Lithuania's bold vision for security prove to be the deterrent it strives to be, or will history repeat itself in a shocking twist? The reality is that aggression breeds innovation in defense strategies. Lithuania's investments in advanced weaponry, including modern battle tanks and anti-tank missiles, underscore a state on high alert. In a tense theater where every decision counts, the world watches as the Baltic states prepare for what could be an unfolding drama of historic proportions. Will the Baltic states stand united against threats, or is there an unforeseen vulnerability amid the elaborate defenses? The answer lies ahead in a narrative that continues to unfold. For years, the world has watched, eyes wide with anxiety, as the specter of conflict loomed over the Baltic states, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. These small nations, caught in the geopolitical crosshairs, have been on high alert, driven by decades of warnings from security experts and political leaders. The invasion of Ukraine by Russia only intensified their fears, motivating them to join NATO in 2004 to stand against any potential aggression. In a bold and strategic move, Lithuania announced the construction of a formidable 30-mile defensive line along its border with Russia and Belarus. This extensive protective measure, due for completion in 2028, is estimated to cost around $2.5 billion and aims to impede adversary mobility while simultaneously securing easier movement for Lithuanian troops, all while safeguarding civilians. In the summer of 2024, a significant military campaign began. Lithuania set up 27 engineering units equipped with tools designed for counter-mobility, razor wire, concrete barricades, and imposing dragon's teeth formations, as well as anti-tank barriers reminiscent of hedgehogs. This three-layered ring of defenses is modeled after Ukraine's successful but deadly Surovikin line. The strategic goal? To slow any Russian advance and reroute them into positions where Lithuanian forces can effectively counter. The first layer of defense, stretching 3 miles deep from the border, will include an anti-tank ditch, embankments, and segments lined with dragon's teeth and minefields. Heavy artillery shells will be ready, while advanced anti-tank capabilities will be bolstered by recent purchases of cutting-edge technology from allies. Moreover, the trees along major roads are set to be felled, transforming the landscape into a natural obstacle course for any invading forces. These preparations are vital. Lithuania, alongside fellow NATO nations on the Eastern Front, deviated from conventional legal constraints, allowing the use of anti-personnel mines to safeguard their homeland. Their readiness resonates with a crucial lesson learned from history. The past failures of defenses like the Maginot Line taught them to leave no stone unturned. As tensions rise, the implementation of these defensive measures poses a nerve-wracking question: will this bold initiative be enough to deter a potent adversary? As construction progresses, the clock ticks down to a future that remains uncertain and fraught with peril. The question of whether this defensive bulk will be the salvation Lithuania needs hangs in the balance, as Russian forces continue to loom ominously at their borders. Only time will tell if this fortress of resilience can withstand the storm of aggression.